Looks like the samurai news wasn't the end, but it was only the beginning. Is an actual attack on Bitcoin self-custody beginning to play out? Welcome back, everyone. If you know what, if you have been paying attention to Bitcoin Twitter for the last, let's say, 3 or 4 days, Bitcoin's dead. The government is going to completely take it over. Everything is KYC services, and that's it. Everybody's going to the gulags, straight to jail, right? Like that's pretty much. This is kind of, in some cases, right? Like, being a Bitcoiner or a person who likes Bitcoin and appreciates its qualities sometimes makes us put on the tinfoil hat and just jump to extremes. Now, again, I'm not saying that the government is not encroaching on all of our freedoms. Obviously, if you watch this channel, you know that I believe that. But at the same time, when things like this happen, it just always seems like it's the end of the world, right? Like that's it, it's finished. And I remember this from 2017, which I've repeated multiple times, right? Like India banned crypto and Bitcoin and all this stuff. They did it multiple times. China literally banned all the fucking miners, okay? We lost 50% of our hash rate in less than 24 hours. If you weren't on Bitcoin Twitter, you wouldn't know, okay? Your Bitcoin transactions, they went through the same as before those miners were offline, okay? You had no clue that any of this was actually happening. Just to give you an idea of the resiliency of the Bitcoin network. Anyways, all right, so of course, right, we know the samurai news, everything. I did a clip on it last week, the weekly episode. We covered a little bit more about it, right, because there's so much more information coming out. But somehow over the weekend, it seemed to get worse. So let's dive into it here. We got this tweet from Stefan Livera. He's got a fellow podcaster. If you guys don't watch the Stefan Livera podcast, I definitely suggest you do. He interviews all the, any dev in the Bitcoin space, any dev that's worth their salt. He's gonna, he will have interviewed them or has them on the schedule to interview. Anyway, so here's a screenshot. Here we go. ZK Snacks is now blocking U.S. residents and citizens. Now, I mean, to people who haven't been following the Wasabi drama, you may see something like this and go, "Oh, that's it. Everybody's closing up shop." Well, okay, so look, Wasabi was the first collaborative spend service to bend the knee to the government, and specifically for the censorship of UTXOs prior to them joining into the collaborative spend service that they've created. So this is kind of a nothing burger, but at the same time, it's also like, hey, we're now going to enforce this. So we took this baby step a year ago, right? We took this baby step a year ago, and Wasabi was like, okay, we will comply. We will have the blacklist, whitelist. And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, our service is simply just going to block U.S. residents and citizens from using their collaborative spend service. Okay, so you may say, Phil, this is the beginning of the end. But it gets more hyperbolic. More accounts started to dive into and interpret what they mean by these money transmitters. So here we go. Here's a tweet from Joe Carlasari. This is at the core of the government's theory regarding control of funds. They argue that in Tornado Cash and in Whirlpool, in the case of Samurai, a user doesn't maintain control of their Bitcoin when it is commingled into pools. This is actually incorrect with Samurai and with Wasabi. These are collaborative spends. And I know, I like the people, the people that understand how the government works. It's like the government doesn't give a shit about that nuance. They don't really care about, oh, well, that's not a mixing service. It's a collaborative spend. But it does matter because Tornado Cash was doing something differently, okay, where your funds were moving to a platform. Okay, where in this case, with Wasabi and Samurai, they are not. And again, I understand the nuance doesn't mean shit, but it does exist. Anyways, as a result, If an entity is responsible for providing the pooling feature, it is engaging in the transfer of funds, even if it never had control of the Bitcoin. And of course, right, they're casting a wide net. They're casting a very wide net, so wide that it almost seems insane. Let me rephrase that. It is insane. So I don't normally quote tweets from Dennis Porter, but anyways, here we go. Banning Bitcoin self-custody would require banning these words. And here is the BIP39 word list. Look, we haven't reached that part in the dystopia yet where words are banned. Okay, we have not reached that yet. Not to say it can't happen, just to say it's a bit of a stretch. But of course, even though it's a stretch, that doesn't stop, right? That doesn't stop us Bitcoiners from commenting on it over and over again and essentially bringing out the ridiculousness of it. So here we go. Tweet from fellow Bitcoiner Eric Yakes. By this logic, writing 12 words on a piece of paper means Dunder Mifflin is a money transmitter. That's right. Dunder Mifflin at that point does become a money transmitter. Your hands are also a money transmitter if we really want to get into it. So are your arms, right? Your brain is now a money transmitter. Where does it end? One of the problems with grouping the Tornado Cash with Samurai and Wasabi, and again, I'm not saying that, like because Tornado Cash is some shitcoin project, right, that it somehow falls out of the purview of this. No, it doesn't. But what happens is that they went for the low-hanging fruit, right? Tornado Cash is an actual platform with a service, and there you go. They've got this mixing. So it's like, they went for the low-hanging fruit. We got you. And because we got you, now we could pull these guys down into the mud. Right. Anyway, so here's a tweet from Lola Leets. Very interesting. And this is actually something that I alluded to on our weekly episode with Walton and I that we had Nifty Nye on. So here we go. The Tornado Cash case could set dangerous precedents for the freedom of the internet. Any provider broadcasting financial transactions from ISPs to do your online banking to Verizon or AT&T to send money via PayPal could be at risk of being forced into KYC. Okay, it's not non-zero, right? It's not non-zero. The question is, how dystopian and how tyrannical does the government become? Anyways, let's continue on because we ended up getting more news on Monday. Right? As if all these little bits and pieces weren't attacks enough. Check this out. Okay. This is what we got on Monday. Okay. So here's a tweet from Bitcoin News.com. Starting September 1st, Russia to ban the use of all cryptocurrencies within their borders, except for digital financial assets issued by the state. The need for the ban is because today cryptocurrency is a quasi-currency that replaces the ruble in the country. Right. So they're threatened, or the Russian government is essentially showing that they seem threatened by this, but they're not mentioning Bitcoin here, right? Only the Russian ruble fulfills the mission of the monetary unit. Indeed. The illusory truth theory, right? Say something enough times and people eventually just believe it to be truth because it's been said so many times. Shout out to John Olido, who this morning in the Good Morning Bitcoin space mentioned that, wait a second, they're not banning Bitcoin, okay? They're not banning Bitcoin. So let's take a look at this. Russia is not banning Bitcoin or crypto, says the lawmaker who actually drafted the new legislation. Russia is banning, check this out, guys, the creation of domestic crypto exchanges and payment services. So if I understand this correctly, it's just the government, right? And their approved winners that are allowed to create the ecosystem. This should sound totally familiar. Now, to end this off, right? To end off the takes, right before I give my take, let's see what Adam Back had to say. There was a long thread that started with Brian Trolls, and I just want to give some perspective on this. Okay. So obviously, Brian is voicing his concern, right, about what this means, the government overreach, the government encroachment. And Adam Back responded. Of course, guys, all these links are in the show notes for you to follow along and go read these all if you'd like to get the full entire context. Anyway, so Adam Back responded. He goes, I've been around a while, all right, in startups at the pointy edge of internet, encryption, privacy tech, now digital bearer cash innovation. Irrational panic fomenting isn't helping anyone or anything. Where would the internet be if prior periods acted like you seem to want? Okay, so it's funny, right? Bitcoiners who haven't been here in previous cycles and they just learned the then they fight you stage think, oh, we've just entered the then they fight you stage. No, the then they fight you stage has been going on for a very long time. The only difference is that it has now taken on a new battleground, which is the battleground of Bitcoin. Okay, the then they fight you stage has probably been happening since governments figured out that they should remove a peg so that they can create infinite money, right? Infinite debt for the nation. And they can also create what they believe is infinite control for the winners that they choose. So look, I'm not going to pretend that it is not a then they fight you. Yeah, I think it is. But something I've learned from government policy and policymakers is this, right? They cast a wide net to see who they can catch, and then they reel it in, right? So this, when we look at, and again, I'm not trying to sugarcoat what this is, okay? Because this is goose stepping, right? We can't look at it in any other way. We can't sit there and say, well, no, they're just going to go away if we prove to them that we don't need this. No, they won't, okay? The government isn't just going to stop desiring and needing control. That's not how that works. Okay. So essentially what happens is that they put out this broad sweeping legislation. Then there's a conversation around it. They pull back, right? The people who object to them or the groups that object to them push a little bit forward. So they get a little bit more freedom and the government pulls back a little bit and says, okay, fine. But essentially what is happening is, and I forget who it is. It could have been Brain on Twitter who said this, but it is a pendulum, right? It is a pendulum sway, and essentially we are swaying towards personal responsibility and freedom. But unfortunately, part of that sway does involve us swaying into some very dystopian, possibly uncomfortable times ahead as governments begin to wrap their collective minds around the fact that people, the average person, is waking up to the fact that the money printers don't actually mean anything, that the money that they've been working for can be devalued at a moment's notice. I actually, before we finish this, I actually spoke to, I remember speaking to my father about this and trying to get him to realize, hey, like everything you worked for, the government devalued it as you were working for it. Like, doesn't that make you upset? And like, he looked at me and he goes, yeah, it makes me upset. But I feel like, and it's not just him, I feel that most of us don't really understand what has happened. And the only way that I can describe it is through learned helplessness. There's nothing in our minds. There's nothing we can do. So why be upset about it? That's not how that works, unfortunately. There is something we can do. Bitcoin is the beginning of that answer. Anyways, guys, there are going to be no clips this week. That's right, because we are going to be live at BTC++. We're going to be running the Good Morning Bitcoin space from there. And then after that, throughout the day, we're going to be doing interviews with the devs. So it's going to be an absolutely awesome live stream. It's going to be going from Wednesday to Friday. I don't know. We might have something special on Saturday. Who knows? But yeah, guys, don't forget to check us out. We are going to be streaming from the BTC++ account. We're going to be streaming from the Pleb Underground account, and we're going to be streaming from our YouTube account. Guys, that does it for today. That's the clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe,